Welcome to the Infinite Life, consciousness raising, spiritual transformation. I'm your host, Katish Haberfield. I am a channel of spiritual beings who portray, display, embody, and convey higher spiritual intelligence to help us humans who are incarnated here today on Earth on our journey of not only a single spiritual awakening, but multiple spiritual awakenings. We're all here to help, and there's bound to be an episode or an entire season that will help you on your journey. So I'll let you explore them. But if you would like to work with me in a private capacity, you can head to katish.com. And thank you. Bless your soul and namaste. I wish you well on your journey. Enjoy the episode today. In this episode, you'll hear a one-question session with Ameera May. Ameera is the founder of the Near-Death Institute and the publisher of the collaborative book Between Earth and Eternity, which brings together a range of perspectives on the soul, consciousness, and what exists beyond this lifetime. She brings a question about her role in creating this book, why she's been guided to bring it together, why the timing is now, and how it is meant to reach people it is intended for. This is a question that often arises when you feel yourself leading something that feels bigger than you, where there is a sense of responsibility, purpose, and also uncertainty about how it is all meant to unfold. As with all of the sessions in this season, I'll take a moment to clarify the question, and then I'll connect and bring through the most appropriate being in the light to respond. What follows is the full transmission. Welcome back to the Infinite Life with me, your host, Katish Haberfield, and we're in season 20, the Ask One Question channeling season. And today I have the honor to have a very special guest, Ameera May. She is the founder of the Near-Death Institute, and she is the publisher of our upcoming book, Between Earth and Eternity. Ameera, welcome to the podcast.
Thank you for having me. I'm excited to be here.
Oh, good. Now, you've got a question for me, and I will then listen to your question, confirm that I understand it, and find the appropriate being in the light who will respond for you, who's qualified and authorized to do so.
Okay, so about my question, does it have to be related to the book and the purpose of the book?
It can be anything that you're curious about, as long as you understand that this is a public podcast. So it can be about the book, can be about your personal life, can be about your professional life, can be a spiritual question or concept that you're curious about. We will see what the answer is.
Yeah, I think it's related to the book and me specifically.
Okay.
As these projects are an assignment of sorts that I have to fulfill. I assume it's part of my contracts and my agreements that I've made before I incarnated. I don't know that for a fact because I haven't had any sort of regressions, but it has been said one or twice in QHHT sessions, but always just glanced over, never really went in depth about. So my question is specifically about this book. Why me, and why now, and why this book? Like, why is it now the timing for it? Because as I'm reading through these chapters, I can see a lot of the things are going to be triggering for a lot of people. I can see a lot of the things that are being said might be a little bit controversial. So why now? Why are these topics being brought up now? And how can my role further be, I guess, expanded into doing what needs to be done for this book to reach who it needs to reach?
So just confirming back, you'd like to understand about your role in terms of this book and in terms of the controversial content that may enlighten, inspire, or trigger people, and understand why you are asked to create this book and why now, and how can you help this book reach the people that it needs to reach. Is that right?
Yes, you got it.
All right. So I'll just let the heart-based energy connect in, and then I will find out who is the authorized person to answer that question. So just give me a moment. Okay. So there's no one in particular here that stands out as being your higher self in terms of an authorized contract representative to speak. But I am getting the feeling more of a collective consciousness who would like to step forward to answer the question from a greater humanities perspective. Will that be fine for you today? Yes? Okay. And me, myself, being Katish, before I go into this, I suspect that because it's a public podcast, that's why they don't wish to speak to the specific private details as to the soul contract.
Yeah.
Yep. Okay. All right. Just one moment. Okay. Sorry, they're very far away at the moment. So I'm just extending my spiritual antenna, if you would say, to try and reach out that far to the consciousness that it is. Okay, and I'm just going to start to describe the way that I feel the energy as I bring it in closer. And I feel it's kind of like, which was what I thought the first time I heard the birds in the background there. It's kind of like a bird energy. It's very light. It's flight-based energy, meaning that it's an energy that doesn't require two legs to stand upon. Quite often the energy that comes through in these one question sessions is of a form of consciousness that I personally haven't experienced before. So that's why it's sort of been testing the waters for me. Okay, so, and here we go. Right. We won't say hello, dear, but she was expecting us to say hello, dear, because many of the other participants in the book have had beings or forms of consciousness that have started with hello, dear. So she was almost expecting that everyone was going to say hello, dear in these sessions, but we don't say dear because you are not a deer. You don't have four legs. And that was just kind of like a private joke. But that's the kind of the energy. I know this book is not a private joke. It is very serious and very important, but it did start as a discussion in the form of consciousness that we are, where we do think about all of the different, teach would call it civilizations, but that's not the right word. It's a form of consciousness that will then become together as a collective identity to become a location, which may be a star, or it may be a comet, or it may be a planet, or it may be some other kind of structural being that creates a civilization as you would know it as human beings in the end. That's what it does. And obviously, there's a process to gather all of the forms of consciousness that wish to be involved in such a creationary project. And so we don't dare to describe ourselves as the collective consciousness of humanity, for who could hold that much energy. But let's say that we are in our design, in our spiritual blueprint, sort of like architects of not just books, but of designs of civilizations and of humanity constructs that would further what we would call the creator's wishes to experience itself. Okay, so you imagine that we might have large pieces of parchment paper in which we would sit around a table if we were human beings, and you would see the figure that you identify as God or the creator sitting with us. And God or the creator or source energy might, in your mind, if you personified his energy or her energy, be mapping out the future, so to speak. And this future may be being designed because of a response to a situation somewhere else in the universe, the galaxy, or the cosmos. And we don't wish to go into too much detail because Katish is trying to imagine it as we speak. But what we wish to say to you is that one of the things that we find incredibly difficult to do is to explain to people how civilizations arise. And the answer is not that how long is a piece of string, because how long is a piece of string in terms of the number of people that would want to contribute to, say, trying to discuss how Earth was created, but how do you architect and take charge of the different types of opinions that there is about a civilization as it is evolving. So, for example, we know that you have collected various different forms of human beings who have had their consciousness demonstrated in different ways. And so some of them we know have blown Katisha's mind already because she didn't know you could be a diamond, for example. And we thought that was fairly obvious. But she also did have a problem with Dolores Cannon's work when she first came across it, when she found out that you could be a rock or a tree or an animal, and she was like, don't be ridiculous. So nobody has the final say or answer or design on a planet or a civilization. It is, after all, an expression of energy, and every single form of expression of energy that there can exist in a location has had to come from somewhere before. It's a creationary force. And if you can imagine, a black hole is not a black hole as humans have discovered. It is like a mother's womb in that there is not ever nothing. There's no such thing as nothing. Nothing doesn't exist. There is some form of matter which a human being would describe as nothing that contains other trace elements that go to form to create something. So when people get bogged down in spirituality or in religious-based ideologies on Earth, we do scratch our heads, and we do have this form of committee. And you may have a billion people stop right here now and go, which committee? But this one doesn't have a very particular name that we could use to express in the language of humans at the moment, but it is kind of like a round table committee where people gather to talk about what is happening. And it's not an alliance based, and it's not a war base, and it's not a peace base. It's architects is the best way, and it's not based on one civilization such as a Pleiadian or an Arcturian or whatever kind of a civilization that you could describe. So it was a thought to try and explain the very many questions that so many human beings do have in their minds at the moment about who am I? Where do I come from? And every time I try to answer this question, I sort of go around in circles, and somebody has a different opinion to me, and I don't know which one is true. And in truth, there is no truth. But we start with a design principle, and then we see who is interested in being involved. And many civilizations and races or star seeds or planet seeds, as we would call them, are involved in creating a planet like Earth. And they have all been in different time frames. But as you say, if you try to map out humanity based on a calendar, the calendars have even changed. You humans have changed the number of days in the week, the number of hours in the day, and each year it changes by a second. So it's very difficult to explain what happened when and where and why. All we can say is that there are available roles in the very beginning of a planet beginning, which do say you are a task-based incarnation, and your task, according to the creator, is to be involved in this particular role in creating the planet. And so what we did try to do, and we have continued to try to do, is speak to different forms of consciousness who are incarnated on the planet, who would kind of, if you like, have a go at explaining to other people in a way that might be received differently than a religious doctrine or ideology. The Bible was a good go, but it's been misinterpreted, and many people are very unsure about that. And every kind of religious book has had a way of trying to explain what is Earth, how did we come here, what are our morals and consciousness, how do we live our life. And we know that it is not an instruction book, your book. We do understand that the thought that we sent out into the multiverse, the multitude, the plethora of, I guess you would say, if you imagined a Filofax, a Rolodex, or a contacts on your iPhone, we have a long list of contacts who are knowledge bearers in various civilizations and forms of consciousness. And so we broadcast a thought stream that said, okay, once more, let's try and find a way to bring through a collection of consciousness that would like to try and explain their perspective on what it's like to be on Earth. And at this time, in the collective consciousness, if you wanted to have a look at a timeline scenario, we're at that time now where we've almost rewound back to the time where people believed in reincarnation before it got officially squashed. So it's kind of like trying to bring up a collection of people who are so invested in the concept of helping people understand that you cannot be extinguished, that we felt it best to identify who, and the word solid is wrong, who is unshakable in their belief systems that they go on. And so we believe that the collection of people that you had brought forward to you was, and we can only speak briefly, a collection of souls who your consciousness has connected with in other knowledge-bearing civilizations. And so, for example, Ish has worked in other civilizations to share knowledge on humans, and so that's why her consciousness was brought forward. And she even has a session on her podcast showing her, as she calls it, half elephant, half lion form, which is actually a lion, who is the best way her mind represents what it would be like to be a knowledge bearer on the constellation of Lyra. And so it made sense for her to be visualized as a lion in Lyra. And so her perspective is one of knowledge bearing through her consciousness in other forms, in other locations. And so whilst it didn't make personal sense for her to be involved at that particular time that you offered it, it made a lot of sense to her soul. And so basically, if you manage to pick up the idea of your soul and the various forms of consciousness that have been before you were the soul that incarnated as a human, connected together and received the light spark or firework or sparkler, if you want to say, of thought form transfer, that did connect out with the idea that our round table said, which said, we wish to find some unshakable people who are ready to speak out, no matter how controversial their origins are or their experiences are. And so in our perspective, and as you have seen, each of the contributors are going through a growth process simply to write their chapter. And that is because some of them have so many examples and so many things that they could write 10 books each on them. But it's about distilling that knowledge down to what is the most urgent concept that will help them explain something that they have had difficulty with in expressing in their own teachings. And so, for example, and can take Katisha's example, and she spoke to you this on your interview on your YouTube page, that for her, she has struggled in part with the concept of, if time is not really linear, even though we live in a time-space continuum where time exists, how can I explain reincarnation when I kind of have discovered past lives and I thought I was two people in the same past life? So that one has taken her I think, nearly 6 years to come up with the examples that were shared in her chapter, because it puzzled her. Because when she first started to understand reincarnation, she was like, okay, I found this particular incarnation and I know when that was, and I can prove that. And now let me go back. And I have read that perhaps it's 500 years between incarnations. So I should predictably think that I should have incarnated prior to that 500 years. And so she sort of went around in her mind for a bit, because she was developing psychic skills at that time that were latent or dormant, and had not been used in this incarnation. And she did come up with a whole big page or two of incarnations that she was very sure of. And then when she stepped into doing past life regressions, none of those came up. And she was very confused. And then a whole cluster came up in the same time period. And she was like, there's no books that tell me about this, or I haven't discovered anything. And so we think that part of the distillation process is the human mind trying to grasp with so many concepts that are almost unteachable, that you have to just simply say, whatever comes out is the most urgent and pressing for each form of consciousness who is incarnated to have expressed, to feel satisfied by the time that they finish their incarnation, that it won't hold them back. Oh, I forgot to teach this, or oh, I wanted to express this, or oh, I didn't say this right. And so there's a lot of wrangling going on with the various authors as they produce their chapters, because it's like giving birth. So yes, I think that if you asked us what your role in it is that understanding and compassion is, sorry, she's got a bit of stuck energy, is the most important part, because it can be frightening for people to divulge more than they expected to divulge in a chapter. So, for example, Katisha wrote her bio several times and got very frustrated. If it was a physical book, we would have thought that she would have thrown it at the wall, because she has learned to control her anger when it comes to expressing who she is, because when she does things like channeling, it flows very easily. And when she goes to write on the paper or on the computer, the logic and the prior earlier in her lifetime careers were very logic, rational, methodological, and it gets her in a sort of a loop of, I can't explain it, I need a diagram, I don't have time. And I know she herself looks at Ameera Being and her diagrams and says, well, that's fabulous, but I can't even explain mine on a diagram, and I don't even want to, because I will get angry, and we have to work through that process. For she's not an angry person, but it's her own inner frustration. So what we see is the chapter is a way of expressing how a soul can feel frustrated at its own attempts to integrate all its own wisdom and knowledge about how things are on earth, and then how do you break it down into simple concepts that resonate with people who have themselves had so many different experiences, but they don't remember them. And there are many narratives that say you only need to remember if there is pain or trauma, but there are also narratives that say, no, you can remember for joy, for bringing through healing that's positive, for bringing through inspiration. And what we would say is that many prodigies who are violin players or musicians of some sort come fully loaded with their skills. These are the children that are 2 years old and can play massive concertos. They have a very distinct birth remembering of their strongest soul skill. And the people that are in the book at the moment don't have that immediate strongest skill. They have had to work through this in their lifetime, and we don't know all the particulars, but we would say that this is part of a reckoning for them as they try to integrate the knowledge of all of the different systems and ways and methods of teaching so that they can try and explain. So your role is to help them understand that in terms of marketing, and this is where Katisha's consciousness is trying to break through, and we will push her back aside again. But in terms of marketing, the job is for them to simply do these simple things because there will be chapters that resonate at different levels and layers. And the simplest way of breaking through to the each and every author is by putting simple things in, like emails and on websites and things like that, that they can actually make it as simple as possible for people to cut through the fear of this is going to be too complicated, or this will be too technical, or this will be something that is above my ability to have knowledge on, or anything like that. So the simpler that you can not convince them, but guide them through very simple steps, then the authors, we believe, should read every chapter thoroughly with a highlighter and pen and take notes. But the people who do receive the book, that purchase the book, there will be one or two chapters that will be strong enough, and they will get everything that they need in those particular chapters. So we would encourage people to make it not the kind of a thing that becomes this textbook or this liturgy of instructions, or something that has got great depth and must be scholarly studied. It's kind of like pick the chapter, open the book, read the chapter that resonates. And if you pick it up in 5 years' time and you're ready to read a second chapter, then that would be the way that we would approach it, because there is just so much knowledge contained in this that the simpler you can break it down, the easier it will be for people to understand. And I think energetically that this is the way it will be received anyway, because there's just so many different ways to express knowledge as human beings. So I guess your job that we would see is to remind them of the basics, because they are so caught up in their own minds about their own perceptions about who they have, what they have written, that these simple reminders to do things that you may think is obvious, but they may be so caught up in the other part of their brain, which is processing the writing, that they will need like a checklist of things to do. So just like Tish does a checklist each time she publishes a podcast episode of create thumbnail, write the meta descriptions, the episode descriptions, post on Spotify, you can imagine the process. Then there's probably a standard list of, okay, 2 weeks before the launch, these are the basics that we expect you to do. Here's a template. This is what we have done in previous launches, copy and paste kind of things to take that anxiety away. Because when you are charged with it's not a responsibility, but the privilege of trying to educate people about the fact that consciousness goes on, and that people will understand that life goes on at the end of the book, then people can get so worried about, have they explained it enough them to make their contribution help with limiting beliefs, that they could get a little bit of in their own fear loop if the simple basics are not laid out in a copy and paste kind of a way. So everything is going as we can see it, wonderful and on schedule. And yes, just the simple approach of, okay, everybody do this, and the stuff that you know how to do, but it's just in simple reminders so that they don't get overwhelmed. And you will naturally find that there are different people who have more experience in various different kinds of areas, and perhaps that they can help each other by saying, oh, if you don't know how to do that, I'll do that for you. Don't worry. Sorry, I'm just letting it come through. Don't feel that if one voice or stream of consciousness is copied and pasted across all of the authors' profiles, that they won't be seen as different, because the consciousness in some of the beings that are contributing for the book are what we would call very spiritually aware of how to use the energy to help shape voices that are not their own in materials that would be used to promote a book. And that does sound very technical, but we hope that you understand that there will be some key individuals who will be able to perhaps write something on somebody else's behalf just to cut through that layer of fear, because just because you can write and teach spiritual concepts doesn't mean that you can be around marketing. So it's just to continue to encourage them. And as those that get overwhelmed, it's probably because they have many books in them and they will do them when they are ready. But to know that they just need to pick out the strongest theme, that if they got to the end of their life and they hadn't shared it, it would feel tight in their tummy, so to speak. So I think that is about all of our time. We wish to encourage you to keep going, and we know that you have small children, so we will not take up any more of your time. But thank you, and I hope that we have understood and expressed to you that, as far as we can see it, your antenna, so to speak, picked up upon a request for help that our committee did send out, and your antenna was very strong in picking up our signal. And perhaps if you ever do decide to explore other lifetimes, you will find knowledge sharing activities that you have done yourself. So bless you and thank you.
Thank you.
Okay.
You're back.
Yes. I
That
hope
was
that
good. Thank you.
I hope that was helpful.
Helpful.
Yeah, it was quite, as I said, a long distance away. The energy was not nearby, so hence the radio antenna signal as a concept. Yeah, but yeah, I found that interesting because of the inference that you have a very strong connector to knowledge sharing and transmissions, and that's so, yeah, you're just like a TV station that tunes in very well. I think that's
Oh,
how
that's cool.
or a radio station that tunes in really well, you know what I mean? It's like um in my words, it's like mediums and channels often have trouble finding peace and quiet and silence, because there's always somebody
Mm.
trying to communicate with you. And the way that I interpreted what they said is that you have a very strong tuning in for very specific knowledge bearing conversations, whereas I get a lot of chat. I get a lot of people
Yeah.
coming in for a lot of chit chat and how are you going and wanting to cast their opinions, but yours seems to be very focused, and that is to be embraced. And yeah, if you do decide to discover the lifetimes, they would they were suggesting that, yeah, you would found that you've done, I wasn't getting similar things, but imagine knowledge sharing projects in other lifetimes or
Yeah.
experiences. Yeah, like it's
It kind
a
of makes sense.
yeah, a core skill, a core skill. Yeah. A
Yeah, it
core
makes sense. It feels natural,
yeah.
sharing information and kind of like this idea of if information were presents, giving the presents, like sorting them and giving them to who needs them. You know what I
Yeah.
mean? Like you might need a present that's relevant for you, but someone else might not appreciate the present that you get as much as the present that they would get,
Yeah.
and I feel like, and I do know how to kind of like, and it's not something that you can study really. It's like a feeling you get. Having a
Yeah.
conversation with someone, you'll know what to say and how to say it. And then having a conversation with someone else, you'll know even if you should say anything or not,
Yeah.
or let them do all the talking and kind of just like nod along. And so I get it. Yeah.
Yeah. So yeah, it also gave me insight into, sorry, I was just sort of catching up with it as well myself, but it gave me insight into, because I've seen on your YouTube channel with one of the authors whose name escapes me, but you've been going through her book chapter by chapter. Lynn, that's it. Yes, Lynn. That, like, for example, for myself, I just got that flash of insight that even though my chapter might seem written and done and obvious, that I could break it down further once the book has gone out to explain
Yes.
think
Concepts and
concepts
ideas.
and ideas, yeah,
Yes.
for people who interact with me already. So yeah,
Yeah.
whereas I
It's very helpful to do that because sometimes someone may read something and they take a different interpretation from it, whereas and maybe it's not a wrong interpretation. Maybe it even expands on your intention for what it could be, but explaining it in like, I want to say in speaking voice is different than in writing voice for a lot of
Yeah.
people, because in writing voice, especially when you have a word count, you want to be as efficient as possible with the words you're using and how many words you were using and how you're using them. But when you speak, you can say what you want to say and you can repeat yourself as many times as you need to. And you can use many different ways and words to get to where you're saying without it being a problem, because there's no word count when you're speaking and having a conversation. You can repeat yourself as many times until you get the message across. And so it's very helpful to like go through each and every idea and break it down into the pieces that it is, and say, oh, this is what I meant here, and here are some examples you could use it as, and I know someone who did this or experienced that, and this is how similarly this works. And for visual learners, for people who learn more, I don't know, efficiently by speaking and conversating, it helps them too. So I
Yeah,
like that.
absolutely. Yeah. I just got confirmation from my team who just rang the Koshi chime. You won't be able to hear it because Zoom blocked it out, but they bang the Koshi chime when they want me to hear that it's confirmed. So yeah, breaking it down. Yeah, absolutely. Yeah. And for me, for example, in my chapter, there's an 1,000-word poem that just flowed out of me, and I'm still like, I don't know where that came from. So I can see that I would like to channel and ask the people who helped me write that where that came
Yeah.
from and why they wanted that to be expressed through me, because it's my soul writing with
Yeah.
its connections, but it just flowed and it was very unusual, and I knew it had to be in there, but it still needs explaining to me.
Yeah. Well, that's exciting. And even with poetry, it's so different than just writing a chapter, because the words are so intentional with poetry and it's so elastic. Like a word could be the word, but there could be a metaphor, there could be a play on words, there could be some kind of alliteration or whatever to make that sentence or that verse more expansive. And so you don't really get that in writing as much as you do in poetry. So I
Yes.
love that you included that 1,000-word poem. I think it's going to be again expansive for people who think in terms of like, if words had a pattern, if words had like colors, and that's how I see poetry.
Oh, right.
So
Okay.
I
Yeah.
think, yeah, I think it would be wonderful for
Yeah, I
those.
didn't even think about recording it, whereas the other poetry books that I've been part of, I've recorded every one, and it is different when you speak it out loud because you've got to find your rhythm and you see it in your mind. Whereas that one just sort of like it was like, and then it was done. So yeah, I'll record that one as a um as a voice poem after the launch, so people.
Yes, you should
Okay.
definitely do that. And also you'll get to record it when we do the audiobook too. So that's gonna be fun.
All right. Okay. There you go. My brain hadn't gone that far ahead yet.
Yeah. Well, I have to think about that. So,
Yep. Sure.
just to remind you, you'll have a couple of practices before then.
Okay, all right. Okay. Well, thank you so much, Amira, for coming on and asking your question. And I hope that the other authors get the chance to listen to this and hear the response as well.
Yes, thank you, Katish. I appreciate you having me. Please leave your feedback, leave your reviews, let us know, email us, message us on social media, let us know what you think of it, send us your feedback. And yeah, we're very excited and we're hoping that it will do what we intend for it to do, and that is to help people release fear, limiting beliefs, and false ideologies about the soul's journey. So, thank you again for having me, and thank you for contributing, and thank you for doing this series. I love it so much.
You're welcome. Take care.
Thank you. Bye.
Bye. If you resonated with this session and you would like to ask your own question, there are two ways that you can work with me. One, you can book a private one-question session where we focus on an area of your life and bring through a direct transmission for you. Or if you're navigating something more complex and would like a deeper level of clarity, you can book a full direct transmission session where we explore your situation in more detail, channel the guidance, and provide structured next steps. All of the details are in the links